The SEC investigating statements that Boeing made about its safety practices following a panel blowout from an Alaska Airlines flight in early January. It's according to a Bloomberg report. The report saying the probe focusing on whether Boeing misled investors. Boeing didn't comment when contacted by CNBC. The SEC says it doesn't comment on the existence or non-existence of possible investigations. Joining us right now is former SEC senior trial counsel Joshua Mays, now a partner at Robbins Firm. Good morning to you. What do you think the responsibilities are for a company like Boeing in the middle of something like this to disclose certain component parts of this story and what happened behind the scenes? Some of what may be alleged, and we don't know fully what this investigation entails, has to do with things that came out frankly, of a lot of media reports over the month or two after this blowout occurred.
Yeah, thanks for having me. The general obligation that Boeing's going to have is to be truthful with the investors and to disclose things that are material. And what you're likely to see is the SEC looking through past statements that Boeing has made to see whether those statements are, true, half-truths, or, something that was intentionally covered up. One of the key places the SEC is going to look for that is in their filings, obviously, the statements that were made by executives to analysts on calls. And, one of the troubles that the SEC will have in that context, a lot of times those statements are very high level. You're talking about very specific safety problems that, products that have had problems in recent times from Boeing. And what you need to focus on is, were those things known by people who were making statements to the markets? And if so, did they have reason to know that what they were saying would be false or misleading? That's a very big task to undertake.
That's what I was going to ask, though. Let's say that the filings say, I'm sure there's some boilerplate that say there are inherent risks in flying and inherent risks in all sorts of things, but then they say, that we are have the best safety standards in the business, and we, work very hard to, meet all of the FAA guidelines, right? I mean, all of that kind of language that feels sort of boilerplate and what you'd expect out of a company. Can that be used against them if, in fact, there was an email the same day that the CEO said that, we think that we have the best practices in the business? He got an email from an engineer who said, we think everything inside the company is awful.
Yeah, the devil is in the details there, because what you really have going on a lot of times is that engineer, maybe 4, 5, 6 levels down from the CEO, the engineers, you got to remember you've got that engineer sees one small piece of a puzzle. So the statements, being made at a very high level are telling about the company as a whole. And any one group, or, Boeing has over 150,000 employees. So you have employees all throughout the organization who, if you say Boeing safety practices are like a puzzle, and you take and you dump 100 puzzle pieces onto the floor and throw away the box, if you give 20 different people 5 of those puzzle pieces, none of them's going to see what the puzzle is, what the picture is that you're seeing. And you've got layered on top of that, that engineer is reporting up to a supervisor who's reporting to a supervisor who's reporting to a supervisor. You're layering the fact that you've got a very incomplete piece of the picture with a phone game problem.
Okay, so Joshua, if I could make you get to choose. You could either be the lawyer for Boeing or you could be the lawyer for the SEC. Which would you prefer to be?
I'd way rather be the lawyer for Boeing because I'm getting paid by the hour. This is going to be a very expensive, burdensome investigation for Boeing, regardless of whether they've actually done anything wrong. A case like this, the SEC is going to, an investigation like this, the SEC is going to staff and put a lot of resources into. They're going to send subpoenas and collect millions of documents. They're going to take testimony from the top executives, the mid-level executives, to really try to get to the bottom of what's going on.
But what I'm really asking. I'm asking who ultimately will have the better case. I mean, we're prejudging the thing from the get-go.
Sure.
But if the SEC is going to put the amount of resources that you just described against a case like this, an investigation like this, you don't do that unless you think that on the other side that there is some kind of enforcement action coming.
Yeah, and in that sense, the government has a ton of leverage. A big company like Boeing, public companies, do not like to go to war with the SEC in court. And so you've got a lot of times what may start out as a fraud investigation. Did Boeing intentionally lie? And there's those, kind of the stereotypical greedy corporate executives are hiding safety problems and risking lives for money. That happens very rarely. And you much more often have, kind of no one seeing the picture or half-truths, in which case the agency will oftentimes end up walking away with your reporting channels weren't well enough designed, or your internal controls weren't good enough. And so you agree to fix them and you agree to pay us a whole lot of money. So, very often that will be the result if it's not an actual fraud, egregious type of fraud case.